All right, traders, how are y'all doing? So right now, Bitcoin, ETH, the whole crypto market is breaking down. Right now, coming up on that August wick, a little ways to go. Let's talk about how perhaps this could have been better predicted. I've been wrong. Um, I put a couple bearish ideas out, but for the most part, I've had bullish ideas. I thought Bitcoin would come back, make a new all-time high. I thought it would bounce from here. It's done the opposite. So I was wrong, and I want to evaluate what things could have tipped it off. I think the first thing is probably the 200. So we're going to look at a lot of things in this video. The first thing is the 200 moving average. A loss of that is never good. And there's times when it's quickly reclaimed, but it also can lead to major downtrend. Which has happened and is happening. So yeah, it looks pretty ugly under that 200 moving average. And the price action, let's put on some levels. I'm going to turn off the gaps. Let's just look at the monthlies. What's happening here is a little bit reminiscent of one of these breakdowns. So that would be one thing. Another thing we could look at is simply trend line breaks. When, say, this trend line broke, or perhaps this trend line broke, we should really be thinking about shorts. And perhaps we could look at the same thing on the total market caps under the 200 and under these descending trend lines. Why not go with the flow with the shorts? So that would be one of the first signs. I'm not really sure what's more is needed than that, honestly. I mean, you want to see price really starting to reclaim the 200. Obviously, there's tradable rallies, but if we look at the altcoin market cap from the 2021 top, there was maybe one, I guess one, two, three, four tradable rallies under there in 1 year, and two, three, four, five, six, a lot more tradable downtrends. So that's one thing to look at. Another thing for Bitcoin in particular, Bitcoin dominance kind of stalling up here. And oftentimes Bitcoin lags. We could also, if we go look at the investment assets and we just see um, some sharp downtrends, volatility coming in, that could have been a sign, perhaps was a sign. And then let's look at funding rate and let's look at CVD. So let's look at CVD because this was another one. Let's look at Bitcoin. ETF flows is another one. So put it in a higher time frame. Basically, this is spot. There was buying pressure on spot since March, but there's just been selling, selling, right? And it really helps. You want to see a lot of buying pressure coming in, or at least uptrend in spot CVD, and we don't have that. We've just had the opposite. And Yeah, price made it despite supposedly negative futures, gotten more and more negative, but spot's been selling off, so um, yeah, what can you say on that? Now, if we look at the funding rate, check it out. Funding rate. The fund rate. Take a look here. Um, make this more easier to see. So we did have negative funding come in. That's true. And price didn't really fall to the upside. However, the negative funding that we saw wasn't particularly extreme, like March 2020, the May dump, the August, or the FTX dump, the Silvergate Bank, right? It kind of looked like this, but yeah, funding went negative, but not hugely negative. So the market's not quite closed yet. So what's going to happen from here? Where might price go? Could it bounce exactly where it is? Well, it might not continue right now because it's Saturday, Sunday, but one of the concerns I have for ETH now is let's turn off the levels for a minute and go in the weekly. Okay, we had a high on the high time frame and a low. And then we had a higher high, higher low, right? Higher high, a higher low. And then it appears that we're putting in a lower high, which suggests possibility that we put in a lower low, which would mean ETH would go back to $800. Seems, I mean, that's kind of how market structure works, right? Bitcoin's a little bit stronger. I mean, failure at all-time highs, though, could mean a retest of the lows. I'm not calling for that. But these 38,000 calls, yeah, why not? The total crypto market cap failed to make a higher high. It's possible we see something like this and shoot higher. I think it's unlikely though, because when we had this pullback and move higher, it was such a sharp correction. But here we've been distributing since March, right? This was basically a 2-week pullback, and then we consolidated, and then we broke out. Here we've been consolidating for 6 months and breaking down. So, I mean, what are some good long areas? Well, one thing is start looking at fib retracements from the bottom. Actually, we wicked into the fib, that golden fib right there on that move. But that's something to look at and to think about. I do want to look at a lower time frame on Bitcoin. Suggestion of the possibility of this. For this, I want to put back on our weeklies and maybe some fair value gaps. Okay, so what do we see? Well, we see lower lows and we see lower highs. Let's put it on the 4-hour. Higher high. A lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. Where are we going? Will we take 49, go back into the 40s? Certainly seems possible. Um, Although I would be looking for a reaction at the August low potentially. That would be a good place to bet. Um, well, one thing for ETH is this was pretty bearish, this failure right here. This is actually my OG setup was the what I call daily sweep. I think for ETH that would be like I would set my limit order. I'd set my stop at 0.31% or 3.1%, and then this would go at 2.5%, and I would limit, and I would aim for 8R. And it actually would have hit today, which is crazy. Bitcoin wouldn't have quite filled, but same concept on this day. Something like that, 8R. This really threw me off, this candle. Also we saw in the lower time frame how many sweeps occur. Right? So when this is happening, sweeps cannot be considered as bullish or bull entry, right? It's it's bearish, it's just lower lows, lower highs. And yeah, at some point longs just give up and price gives out. Same thing on the upside is sweeps of the highs are not necessarily bearish, right? Till we had this move. What's different about this? Outside liquidity. So given all that, the right play, if there was a right play, would have been to limit sell in one of these gaps, perhaps. Um, ETH probably would have been an easier one because it's a lot more bearish, but just being a limit seller right there. So, meanwhile, Solana as well. I mean, Solana looks pretty terrible, spending all this time under the 200, right? Again, we made a lower high. Should we make a lower low? if we break down and price is up 1,000% in a year still, how much possible downside is there? Possibly a lot, right? So, yeah, loss of the 200 moving average is not something to be fucked with. And we might bounce here, I don't know. I'm not calling for immediate move down, but um, I was for sure wrong about calling for an all-time high here. That looked possible right there, but yeah, I just tried. Longs the way down, it didn't work. So, happy trading and protect yourselves out there because anything can happen in these markets. Much love and peace.